especially YouTube, 99% of what you get is really scams, Ponzi's, and really bad stuff, pump and dump, and awful.
Mm-hmm.
So I sometimes feel ashamed when I'm saying I'm working in this industry, because that's how it is received, or that's how it's appeared in the public, how the public mind about it, how they see it, because of this misinformation or the attention is more on those very loud scammers, and you don't really see the actual ideology or background behind it, what Ethereum really stands for, what decentralized applications can do, what self-sovereignty is doing for you. And this is really hidden underneath. So I can totally understand when people feel Web3 and crypto is all a scam, but it's not all a scam. It's on the surface. You have a lot of scam, and it maybe looks like it's 90% of it, but actually it's maybe just 20 or 30% of it, but it's just very loud. And there's a really good core of really good people, a great community. If you go to an Ethereum conference, you will see them and building really good stuff, which could impact our society for a very long time, building things which will never stop running. And this is what really excites me and still excites me. And I'm still there despite of all the scammers and this bad stuff happening, because the core is still going very strong.
Hey everybody, Tanner here with WAGMI Ventures. On today's episode, we have Christoph Jentzsch, co-founder and CEO of Corpus Ventures. For anyone who's new, this is the WAGMI Ventures podcast, where we do snapshots with interesting founders from across Web3. Check out wagmiventures.io to learn more about the syndicate behind the podcast. But for now, let's get into it with Christoph from Corpus Ventures. All right. Hey, everybody. I'm here today with Christoph Jentzsch, co-founder and CEO of Corpus Ventures. Christoph, how are you doing today?
Great. Thank you for asking. A little bit sick in the family, but not too bad. So I'm fine.
Okay. I want to just jump right in. I think of the 18 people I've gotten to interview thus far, all very interesting founders in their own right, but I think you've got one of the most interesting stories by a mile. So I'd love to hear, maybe to start, a little bit about kind of that high level, just your professional journey so far that's brought you to Corpus Ventures.
Sure. I try to make it short, and then you can jump into questions if you want to dig any deeper. So my background is actually, I'm a theoretical physicist. That's what I studied. And during my PhD time, I spent some time with Bitcoin. This was 2013. And I was doing computer simulations of physical systems. And then I wanted to order a lot of GPUs, and I stumbled upon those Bitcoin mining rigs. And so I started digging into this, totally fascinated by the idea of Bitcoin. Then at the end of 2013 or beginning 2014, I stumbled upon the Ethereum white paper written by Vitalik, which completely blew my mind, because now the idea of Bitcoin with decentralized currency could now be applied to anything else. So that's why I often refer to as Bitcoin as a digital currency which needs a blockchain to function, but then Ethereum is a blockchain which also needs a currency to function, but then focuses much more on decentralizing anything else. So then I went down that rabbit hole, and then I decided to pause, even until today, so I'm not a doctor, my PhD, and work for the Ethereum Foundation. This was summer 2014. So I went full-time with this. I worked for Gavin Wood directly as a chief tester, meaning my job at the Ethereum Foundation was to make sure there are tons of tests, ensuring that all the implementations of Ethereum are compatible with each other, or most importantly with the protocol itself. So that's what I was doing there for 1.5 years. And then I founded the company Slockit. This was end of 2015. At that time, actually, maybe some people didn't know, but the Ethereum Foundation was about to go bankrupt, in the sense of they raised funds as a one-time thing. And once the funds are spent for the project, there's no reason for continuing with it. There's no money left. They did have some Ether, but back at the time, it was something like 50 cents per Ether. So they told us all, we have 3 months of runway and look for a new job now. And I had this idea about Slockit all the time. Later on, the price of Ether went up, so the foundation could continue until today, and most likely pretty much for almost forever. But Slockit was this idea of building a decentralized sharing economy. using IoT devices connected to the blockchain. So, for example, a smart door lock, which would only open if you pay on chain. So we built a prototype. We presented it on stage at DEF CON 1 in London, and then we also came up with this concept of the DAO. In the beginning, it was just we wanted to do fundraising and create a token, which was unusual in 2015. This was pre-ICO era. So, and when I coded the smart contract for it, I decided to give the token holders more rights. In the beginning, it was just let the money stay in the smart contract, and we have to make proposals which the token holders need to vote on, so we can get the money out for whatever we want to do. So that was the beginning of a DAO. And then we had this idea of saying, well, why not let everybody put money in if they want to, or anybody, and everybody can make a proposal to get money out, and they can vote on it. And this is essentially what the DAO was. And so it has no direct tie to Slockit as a company, but was more like a public fundraising vehicle for back in the days for the decentralized sharing economy. But then it started, and you know the story, it raised tons of money, $150 million back at the time in 2016. And so then it became something which was more like a venture fund. And then people didn't see it as Slockit financing. They also didn't see it as a decentralized sharing economy anymore. But this was funding all the Ethereum startups at the time. This was the idea. I think the story is known. It failed because of a bug in the smart contract, which led to the DAO wars and hacks and hacking back and a lot of crazy stuff. And it resulted into the hard fork of Ethereum, which was a very controversial discussion back in the days. And we have now Ethereum Classic and Ethereum. At Ethereum, everybody mostly got their money back. And that's how this part ended. Just to follow up what happened afterward quickly before we might dig deeper into any of this. I continued with Slockit, even though many people said you can shut it down. You're now like infamous and that part is over. But we decided we want to stay together as founders. We wanted, why should we change name or like start a new company? We want to continue to follow the same dream and vision. Beginning, we just kept ourselves alive with some consulting and for large German companies. But then we got some funds from Silicon Valley VC, continued to building our vision. Did a pivot, focusing more on IoT devices, less on the sharing economy during those years, and grew the company. I think there were something like 40 to 50 people at the top. Large part were still doing consulting, another part doing products. And we sold the company in 2019. I stayed as a CEO for 2 more years and then left, took a 6-month break for my family. I have 8 kids here, so lots of things to do. And beginning of that year, I started Corpus Ventures, which is a venture studio, not an investment fund, not a VC, just a venture studio building missing pieces in Web3.
Very cool. Okay. So there's so much we could dive into there. So since we could spend the whole time talking about kind of what you've been up to, let's maybe just start with Ethereum. What first attracted you to working on Ethereum, and how did that time influence your subsequent thinking and professional journey, kind of at the time, as best as you can remember? I know this was a bit ago, but
it was, I think, by far the most impactful thing which happened to me. I mean, I was fascinated by Bitcoin and this idea of decent money and how this worked and the technical stuff around it. And at that time, in 2013-14, it was possible to know everything about it and read everything which was written about it. And the community was so small that when there was a Bitcoin conference, almost everybody was there. So, and this community also appealed to me. It was thinking of freedom. It was against big government in some ways, about self-sovereignty, and how this was like a peaceful revolution in some way, without force, but just by offering something better. And so being fascinated by it and going to some conferences, and then I read this white paper by Vitalik, and it was so mind-blowing that the same thing could now be applied to other systems, such as the domain name system, fundraising, or decentralized finance in general, and many, many other aspects. He also actually mentioned DAOs in the white paper. I really recommend reading this white paper because it's like a prophecy. Almost all of it is fulfilled. And the only thing I think he didn't foresee was NFTs, but all the other things, DeFi and fundraising and DAOs, all in there, and even ENS. So how it impacted me then to work for Ethereum. When I started, they were also mostly remote. We had an office in Berlin, so I was driving there by maybe every other week. I'm living 2 hours down south from Berlin and in Germany. So the culture was people didn't work there for money. This was very clear. I think it's the opposite of what you see today in the crypto space. They really were very idealistic people. And some people even didn't want to get Ether from the foundation because they found it's a conflict of interest. So, and they really were there to build something so special and so impactful that it was way, way more important than money. It was like a hidden rule. You don't speak about the Ether price. It's just not a topic. And the goal was to build infrastructure for decentralized applications. And this was, one part was Ethereum, the blockchain, one part was Swarm, decentralized storage, another part was Whisper, decentralized messaging. The other two didn't take off, only the Ethereum blockchain did take off. But the goal was to provide everything needed to build applications which would run forever, like Bitcoin. So we had this Bitcoin mindset and building Bitcoin-like applications which have the same attributes as Bitcoin, but would run on this decentralized infrastructure, which we would call Ethereum. So it has a huge impact on my mindset and how I thought about applications and what is possible in the future. And of course, all the people you meet there, like Vitalik, Gavin Wood, Joseph Lubin, and others, of course, they all impacted my life.
Yeah, super interesting. Okay, so let's move forward a little bit to the genesis of Slockit, where my understanding is that it was basically the most exciting project in the Ethereum community when it came out in 2015 and when you publicly announced it at DevCon 1. So I guess I'm curious, both, what insights had coalesced in your mind that prompted you to focus there out of the whole opportunity space of Ethereum? And also, what was it like building Slockit at such an early stage in the life of Ethereum?
Good question. So first of all, I had the opportunity to work for Gavin Wood at ETHCore, which would later on become Parity. He invited me there as a founding member, and then also at the Ethereum Foundation, they also wanted to keep me because then they found they have some money. So, but I always had this entrepreneurial spirit of doing something on my own. And together with my brother and Stefan Tual back then, who was the chief communication officer at Ethereum, so he did also know the Ethereum community very well. We just wanted to do something on our own. And we saw this great opportunity. And my thinking was that Ethereum would not be used as a currency for payments, but maybe it would be used for currency for IoT devices. I'm still in love with IoT and how you could connect all those devices and give them something like a bank account. So I was always speaking about the economy of things. And this was my broader vision at that day. And so we played around with the smart door lock and writing a smart contract for renting an apartment, how you would pay the rental fees, and then you would get access to opening the store lock. And it worked right away. It was great. And when we showed it at DEF CON, it was like the first physical implementation of Ethereum. You could touch it. It's a door lock. And you make a transaction in Ethereum, and then it opens. So this was like so mind-blowing. We also showed how a power plug could be switched on and off. You could imagine like renting out even your washing machine in a shared apartment or something like this. So the imaginations were really spurred up and many people thought about what could be done with it. And this, of course, made us very excited. But working in the Ethereum space at that time, I think at DevCon 1, everybody in the Ethereum space was there. So it's still about 400 people. Outside of the Ethereum world, nobody did really take note of us. We were still a small project. And everybody we explained the project to outside of the Ethereum world did not really understand why we were doing this, what benefits would come out of it. So it was still extremely difficult, if not impossible, to raise fundraising outside of the Ethereum community. So classical VCs had absolutely no interest in it. So I went to New York, pitched for many VCs there, and they all basically said no interest. So it's just too complicated and nobody would use it. And maybe some of them were right. But the Ethereum space was so early that I said the Solidity compiler was in a very early version. There was no IDE. Everything happened on the command line or using V and Emacs. So it was very puristic, but I loved it. But we didn't have, as it later showed, all the experience to write secure smart contracts. We were not aware of reentrancy, which did take down the DAO. And many other things. We were not as security focused as after the DAO. The DAO was really a pivotal moment in the Ethereum ecosystem. Before that, everybody's spoken about applications, opportunities, and just build. After that, 90% of the talks, and also at DEF CON 2 in Shanghai, was about smart contract security, how we can secure the stuff, how we can build more secure applications, best practices, and so on. Rightfully so.
Yep. Super interesting. Okay. So I'm curious, after you sold Slockit to blockchains in 2019, what were your biggest takeaways from your experience building Slockit, and how did that inform what you've paid attention to versus ignored in all the broader activity kind of constantly happening in the Web3 world since then?
So I did a lot of things right, but many mistakes, of course. And one mindset I inherited from Ethereum, which was not very helpful, was this build it and they will come. Ethereum by purpose did not do any active marketing. It was like, also you just don't do this. It's scammy. You don't market your token. You just build it and do some educational content maybe, and then they will just come. And that's what happened actually with Ethereum. Even though Stefan Tual and others did a great job at community building, creating all those meetups and things like this, but I thought the same would happen with Slockit. We just built this door log and we built the app, they released it on the App Store, and they would all come and just use it and just find it awesome, which didn't happen. So we built the application, it was there, but almost nobody used it because it was just so complicated. There was no MetaMask and nice, easy wallets. They just came out. So the key management was such a big problem. Then, of course, we said, well, people need to run their own nodes. So they have really had to run their own nodes. So we try to create images for Raspberry Pi, say you have to order a Raspberry Pi with your smart door log so you can run an Ethereum full node on it. Back then, this was possible. Then later on, we created Incube to solve exactly this problem. So we found actually out, even though we quickly created the application, the rest of the time we just spent solving general Ethereum problems like key management, running a node, or using Infura. And those are the things which took most of our times because we just were way too early with all the things we did. And we did focus absolutely not at all at marketing and things like this. So we didn't have any users. We thought the reason for this is because the technology is not ready. We need to build all those other key management or full node running tools. This is, I think, a mistake we did at Slockit. That's why we didn't have customers for our actually sharing economy project. We kept like the money coming into consulting because there was a huge interest in people for speaking, education, and building prototypes, things like this, which was fun. And I also made the mistake of getting, how would you say, distracted by consulting. It took too much time. We made quite some money with it, but it did take the attention away from the actual product.
Got it. Super interesting. Okay, so one piece of the story that I won't touch on too much, but do want to briefly consider is I guess what's kind of colloquially called like the DAO hack, or versions of that, and the technical underpinnings of exactly why this was possible and various versions and oral histories of the story itself. I think they're fairly accessible to people who want to dig that stuff up. But I guess what I'm most curious about is how you move past it personally, not professionally, because my understanding is that no one was doubting capabilities or leadership or anything like that. It was just, personally, especially as I think about how I might have responded in such a situation, I have to imagine it might have taken some grit and determination to move forward with lessons learned, but also not letting it affect your imagination or willingness to experiment and continue to build. So can you talk a little bit about that part of the journey?
Sure. So first, if people look it up and don't know the DAO yet, I would refer them to books like The Cryptopians by Laura Sheen or The Infinite Machine by Camilla Russo. Those are really good books, well written, and have good content, and most of it is actually true. So, but how did I feel during the time? So, I was personally very depressed, and sometimes people don't know, but I was depressed before the DAO hack because it was just so overwhelming. I'm just a normal guy coming from a middle-class family. I'm not used to having tons of money. And then having all this attention, all the press, all the pressure on me. I was main author of the smart contract, even though there were people it was open source, people were helping, and I showed the contract to almost anybody in the Ethereum space to check on it. And we did a security audit, but I felt so responsible, so much duty. Like if something goes wrong, what would happen? Did all the legal stuff. People said, well, maybe it's a security sale and you need to register with the SEC, you can go to jail. And other people said, no, it's a DAO, it's something different. And you have no certainty whatsoever. No certainty whether this is legally all right, no certainty if this technical will work out. Nobody has done anything like it before. All the tools we are using are so immature and early. So I felt this pressure. And then when we released the code and the DAO was deployed by someone and it raised so much funds, I was super scared. And people knowing me at that time, they were like partying, saying, well, you made it and super successful, the biggest crowdfunding ever at the time. But I was not happy about it. I felt like it was way too big. 5 million would be more than enough to build what we wanted to build. We don't need that much money, and we would not most likely not get it at all as a company, because this was a DAO which could spend the money for something else. And then when the hack happened, even though I was totally shocked, laying on the ground, thinking about it, I was also relieved because this was clearly the end of it. I didn't see any path forward for the DAO after the hack. The only path forward would be somehow trying to make the token holders whole again, getting their money back somehow. This was the only objective I had in my mind. Then I closed this chapter in my life. And maybe sometimes I think, what if the hack wouldn't have happened? The DAO might have failed otherwise, making bad investments or other bad stuff. And I would always be the person who authored it, but have no control whatsoever over the DAO. So this would always be like connected with me. And this was the only way for it to actually end. So that's why I actually felt relieved. If you talk to my wife, there was at least 2 weeks where I was so depressed I didn't want to talk to anybody before the hack. Then after the hack, I only focused on getting the hard fork specification out, solving the problem. I was super happy that the community did go for it, which was absolutely not a given. And after that, I was relieved to take a break. But I still was an entrepreneur, so I still felt there's so much I can do. It took a while for me to get the energy back to the same level as before. But when I felt, especially at DEF CON 2 in Shanghai, this warm welcome from the Ethereum community, that they were not mad at me and did not call me any bad names, I felt, well, I'm still part of this community. They still like me. They still want to work with me. They don't condemn me for what I did. They see what happened, and I didn't do it by purpose. I was not a scammer. I did not lie or make any false hopes. It just happened. So I did come away pretty good with it. If I look at my co-founder, Stefan Tual, who was more the public spokesperson, he was hit much more, also on a personal level. But it's a different story for another day. But I was lucky to get away with it and the way it did. And I'm thankful for the Ethereum community that welcomed me back with open arms.
Yeah, love it. Okay, so I know you did some great work with blockchains, but I want to hop along just for time's sake to what you're creating now with Corpus Ventures. So can you tell us what Corpus Ventures is in a little more detail and kind of what you're up to there?
So the Venture Studio came along because a couple of partners and people I know wanted to build new stuff. We said we want to work together. We had lots of ideas, and we didn't decide on one. We said, well, let's try out all of them. And what's the best way of doing this? It's in the form of a venture studio, meaning it's one company, one team, and we are building several products. And if something fails, it gets stopped immediately. If something succeeds, we focus on it. That's how we operate. With one exception, this one product, which I might explain in a second, called Tokenize It, this is a long-term project. This is not something we'll just stop because it took so much money and effort, and it's just in the what we do with Tokenize It, you cannot do it in a typical venture studio form of just try and error and stop it if it doesn't work. But the others are like that. So I can quickly go to the projects which are live right now. And so one is GasHawk. GasHawk is a very simple tool which lets you save gas for non-time critical Ethereum transactions. So how you use it, if you, for example, use MetaMask, you choose GasHawk as your RPC provider. It's all explained on the gashawk.io website. And there you can set how much time you have for these transactions. Like that doesn't need to be mined or validated within the next 1 hour, 10 minutes, 24 hours. So you decide, and depending on that, we send your already signed transactions at a better time. So the idea for this came during the height of gas prices about a year ago, when people paid hundreds of dollars for some transactions. And we found out, this is the most surprising insight, that not like, for example, the Ether price, which fluctuates highly, which I think is really randomly going up and down more or less, and you cannot really predict. The gas price on the other side is very predictable. That's something I didn't think or anticipate. We made some analysis, some statistics, or some Fourier analysis. You can see very clear spikes at certain frequencies, like every day, or when Asia wakes up, when the US wakes up, or when the bots are sending transactions by the hour. And because of all this information, we made a model which is very good at predicting the gas price for the next 24 hours, or especially for the next 60 minutes. And based on that model, when you're sending a transaction which is not time critical, like not a trading transaction, but something like deploying a smart contract or registering an ENS domain or sending an NFT or Ether to someone, some things which are not time critical. You sign a transaction as always with MetaMask, and then you send it not to Infura in case of MetaMask, but you send it to us. We keep it, and within the time we have decided, we send it at a better time slot, and on average, we save 30% on your gas costs if you are willing to wait for 1 hour. So that's a pretty good result, and it's live. You can use it. It's completely free on gashawk.io. So that's product number one. Product number two is DM3, which is a messaging protocol for Web3 messengers. Here the idea is, if you look at email, it's the first real success of Web1. It's decentralized, it's a protocol, but not encrypted. If you look in Web2, you have instant messengers. It's encrypted, it works as a nice user experience, but it's not decentralized and it's not interoperable. You cannot send a message from WhatsApp user to Telegram to Signal and vice versa. It's not possible. And if you look in Web3, there is currently only a handful of messengers trying different things. But what is your username in Web3? We believe it's your ENS name. So if you have an ENS name, like for me, it's Jentzsch.eth, that's who I am in Web3. And if you want to send me a message, what do you need for this? You need only two things. You need my encryption key, or the public encryption key, to encrypt the message, and only I can decrypt it. And you need a URL or a location to send the message to. And this is the information we publish on ENS as a text record. And then you can use whatever messenger you want, as long as this messenger is supporting the DM3 protocol. They will, when sending a message, look up your public encryption key to encrypt the message. Then they look up on ENS your delivery service URL, that's how we call it, where to send the message to, and then you send it there. And if you're using a messenger, their URL will be there. So you send it to, for example, Status or Wallet Connect Chat or Skiff, any of those. And we are in talks with them that they will implement this protocol. So with this, we hope to get interoperability in Web3 messaging, and you take your username with you no matter what messengers you're using.
Got it.
That's DM3. And the last one, and then ask some questions about it, is Tokenize It. That's solving the problem of tokenizing a German GmbH. A GmbH is like LLC in the US. So tokenizing those shares is actually not straightforward. I don't have the time to go into the depths how it works, but we have found a solution with lawyers to create a token which has the same economic value as if you were a shareholder in that company. You get dividends paid out, you get liquidation proceeds, and you have the right to always convert the token into a real share. And we have found a legal, I would almost say, trick how to bind them together by something called a public award, which is you can make a statement that you award a certain behavior. So I could say if you solve a certain mathematical puzzle, you get 1 million euro. I can say it in a way that it's legally binding. This is like a one-to-many contract. I promise whoever does this gets this reward. We use this for binding the token to the company shares by saying the company makes a public statement stating whoever sends the token back to me, I will reward with a newly issued company share. And this promise is public. Because of this, you don't need investment contracts between investor A, B, C, and D, or on the secondary market when they trade those tokens. None of this is needed because you're always referring to this public statement or public award by that company saying, I reward this action of sending a token back to me by giving you a newly issued share of my company. Or I reward the holding of my token by giving dividend payouts to you. And by doing this one-to-many contract, we have solved this problem of not needing any of those investment contracts and many of the other bureaucracy around investing in LLCs or in German GmbHs.
Love it.
Yeah,
Okay, that's fascinating.
that's currently what we are building.
Got it. Okay, so I'm sure you love all the projects equally, so maybe it's not fair to ask which one you're most excited about right now, but maybe more broadly, as you think about the future of Corpus Ventures, what gets you most excited?
So, well, Tokenized is my personal baby. The other two projects are done by other partners. I love them as well, but that's my preference right now. It's maybe coming also a bit from the DAO space. I love digital native internet companies. And that's, I think, a vision I have in my mind since the DAO, that we have companies which are borderless, which people are forming together, doing certain things. The DAO was the most extreme form, meaning in decentralization and decentralized governance, and everybody having something to say. And if you look at a standard LLC for like a startup, for example, there are classical hierarchy makes a lot of sense for building a product. Actually, currently my opinion is as a standard company is better for building products, and a DAO is good for maintaining products. And so you only need them at a later stage, not at a finding product market fit or founding stage of a product. So in my vision for the future is that we will have companies which are digital native in the internet, that everybody can simply join with their wallet, either investing or getting paid in tokens or in any other currencies for doing some work for them. You can use your tokens to incentivize your early adopters, but you can still have a classical hierarchy if at that time in the company's life cycle it is needed, especially in the beginning. So not focusing so much on decent governance, but focusing more on what I would call internet native or digital native companies, having their shares like a programmable equity. Like I think Ether invented programmable money, and now we have programmable equity in forms of tokens. And that's a vision I'm working for with Tokenized and hope we will achieve.
Love it. Super interesting. Okay, couple last questions. So I have to guess, as someone who's been in the space as long as you have, that it could be easy to become maybe cynical or jaded about all kinds of things, really, where, from reading various things you've written and said online, though, you strike me as not a cynical person. And even just talking to you here, you strike me as pretty realistic, but, it feels like realism is a really balanced and necessary attitude to have. So am I wrong? Could you talk a little bit about your attitude toward the space, especially maybe with respect to those who might want to claim crypto's all scams, it's all Ponzi's, blah, blah, blah?
A lot of it is. I think in the beginning I was very idealistic. I have this idolatry, the dream of decentralization and crypto. In the ICO era, in 2016, 17, 18, I became very grounded, realistic, and disappointed. And still, I think if you Google blockchain, crypto, Web3, or especially YouTube, 99% of what you get is really scams, Ponzi's, and really bad stuff, pump and dump, and awful. Mm-hmm. So I sometimes feel ashamed when I'm saying I'm working in this industry, because that's how it is received, or that's how it's appeared in the public, how the public mind about it, how they see it, because of this misinformation or the attention is more on those very loud scammers, and you don't really see the actual ideology or background behind it, what Ethereum really stands for, what decentralized applications can do, what self-sovereignty is doing for you. And this is really hidden underneath. So I can totally understand when people feel Web3 and crypto is all a scam, but it's not all a scam. It's on the surface. You have a lot of scam, and it maybe looks like it's 90% of it, but actually it's maybe just 20 or 30% of it, but it's just very loud. And there's a really good core of really good people, a great community. If you go to the Ethereum conference, you will see them and building really good stuff, which could impact our society for a very long time, building things which will never stop running. And this is what really excites me and still excites me. And I'm still there despite of all the scammers and this bad stuff happening, because the core is still going very strong. And I hope to still contribute to this core. And I hope in the end we win, because this will last. Like FTX can come and go. Some other projects like it can come and go, even though they get a lot of attention. But this core is growing constantly. Actual users are growing constantly, despite of those fluctuations in the market and the public appearances. And I hope people can see it. Now, maybe it just takes more time until people can find this diamond hidden under the surface.
Love it. Yeah. Okay, so 2 last questions here. First question, what's your most generalizable advice for founders building in the Web3 space?
Don't start with a token and a DAO, but first validate your product, building a small prototype and getting it out to the people as soon as possible. Sometimes people think so big because the idea potentially is so big that they focus more on the setup in the beginning, creating a foundation in Switzerland, making a big DAO out of it, writing lots of papers about it, how this whole concept could work and takes years to build. That's usually setting you up for failure. Going back to this, maybe learning a little bit from the good things of Silicon Valley. Silicon Valley has bad sides, but not all of it. Is going out quickly, building prototypes and just build. And once you've found there is a certain product market fit, then you can consider building a DAO around it. I think a perfect example is ENS. ENS started small and humble, focused on the core vision, and once it became big, then it created an ENS token and a DAO, and this is running pretty good. So that's maybe the most general advice.
Yep. Okay, Christoph, last question. What is the best way for people to follow along the journey at Corpus Ventures?
Just follow us on Twitter. If you search for Corpus Venture or just my name, Christoph Jentzsch, you can find me. Follow us there and you get updates.
Love it. Christoph, thank you so much for the time. I really look forward to seeing all the awesome projects to come from Corpus Ventures and the evolution of the ones you guys are working on now. And I look forward to staying in touch as the journey progresses. So thank you again and have a great rest of your week.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.